He is a hero of two worlds, outer space and here on Earth, a being of two forms, human and machine, a creation of two industries, toys and comics. He is trapped in the past, but a vision of the future. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of ROM. ROM the Space Knight is a 13-inch electronic action figure produced by Parker Brothers in 1979. Known for their long, successful history of board games and puzzles, ROM represented Parker Brothers' first and last foray into the world of action figures. ROM's creation was a team effort, from his physical form to the mythology that continues to inspire fans today. The patent for the figure is credited to three people: Bryan, McCoy, Richard Levy, and Scott Dankman. Inventor Bryan L. Bing McCoy got the ball rolling after successes with other electronic toys like Electronic Battleship and the Electronic Starbird spaceship. Those successes led to the creation of a company which was run by Scott Dankman. Richard Levy was brought in as a marketing guy. Bryan allowed their names to be on the patent so they could reap the tax benefits. Bryan originally conceived of ROM as an Egyptian mystic because, in his own words, he was young and dumb and didn't consider that no company would want to sell an Egyptian mystic. After several companies turned it down, he changed ROM into a cyborg and found a partner in Parker Brothers. But at the time, ROM was just a concept, a design, and patented electronics that could be installed in a figure, and it wasn't called ROM. When Bryan brought the idea to Parker Brothers, it was called COBOL. COBOL is a programming language, the term itself shorthand for common business-oriented language. That isn't very exciting, but the real computer-based functionality of the names don't have to be. They just have to sound cool, like Fortran or Pascal or Tron. Parker Brothers would make some cosmetic adjustments to COBOL's appearance and change his name to ROM. ROM is an acronym for read-only memory, but that has no bearing on his character or mythology. It probably just sounded better to marketing. ROM was given a sleek, futuristic, robotic appearance. His internal electronics, powered by a single 9-volt battery, lit his red eyes and gave him an assortment of different sounds you could activate depending on the combination of buttons you pressed on his backpack. He could respirate like Darth Vader, ignite his rocket pods, activate his translator, utilize his energy analyzer, or blast away with his neutralizer. Pose him in whatever action situations you could get him in with shoulder, hip, and knee articulation. In 1979, thanks to the blockbuster success of Star Wars, space adventures, robots, cyborgs, it was all hot. Hot, I'm telling you! You couldn't swing your arms in the toy aisle without knocking over space robot toys. I mean, you could, but they would ask you not to. To help promote their new cyborg outer space hero, Parker Brothers commissioned television commercials to really sell the drama of this toy. They combined that with ongoing Marvel Comics, who further developed the mythology, something they already had experience with on other toy properties like Shogun Warriors. Written by Bill Mantlo and illustrated by Sal Buscema, ROM was now more than just a cyborg. He was a space knight from the planet Galador. Not the Lego Galador, the other one. When Galador was threatened by the evil shape-shifting mystics called Dire Wraiths, he is one of 1,000 volunteers who answer the call to become space knights. Space Knights, thanks to the advanced Galadorian technology, are human-robot hybrids, a combination of alien computer technology and human biology. Their armored exterior covered with plandanium, at least as hard as adamantium and vibranium and twice as fictional. Not to be confused with dansplanium, which is what you call it when I give you an overly wordy explanation to something that you didn't ask for. Dansplanetarium, which is what I call it when I poke a bunch of holes in a piece of paper and shine a flashlight through it at the ceiling in my bedroom. Danplanthum, which is what my wife suggests when I ask her what I should do with a giant bag of seeds, or Dandemonium, which was my original suggestion for the name of this channel. Any extra squishy parts of the volunteers' organic bodies that weren't utilized during the transformation process into Space Knights were put into storage. At the end of their term of service, Space Knights could retrieve their fleshy bits and bobs to become a complete human again. The heroic army of Space Knights succeeded in repelling the Dire Wraith invasion, but ROM wasn't the type to just let things go with their retreat. Armed with the neutralizer, Galador's greatest weapon, which enabled him to blast them into the limbo dimension, ROM pursued them back to their planet, Wraithworld, to finish them off. The dire wraiths fled, scattering to the ends of the galaxy, which was something ROM had not anticipated. He had to face the fact that it was his fault they were now dispersed throughout the galaxy. He swore that he would not resign his role as a space knight. He would not return to being a full flesh and blood human until such time as he had tracked them down and banished them all to limbo. He was joined by fellow space knights like Starshine and Terminator, and 200 years later they arrived on Earth, in Clairton, West Virginia, the Mountain State. Here they would become part of the Marvel Universe proper, encountering and joining forces with everyone from the Fantastic Four to Power Man and Iron Fist to S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers, and the X-Men.
This is ROM, the Space Knight. You can imagine he comes from another galaxy with his flashing neutralizer. Activate ROM. You can imagine he has rockets to blast into space and a translator that communicates with lights and sounds. You can even imagine his respirator lets him breathe in any atmosphere. ROM comes with the 3 plug-in accessories shown, 9-volt battery not included. ROM, the Space Knight, an electronic toy new from Parker Brothers.
Parker Brothers licensed ROM to Palitoy for distribution in the UK and other European markets. He would be associated with their Space Adventurer series within the existing Action Man line of 12-inch figures, a closer association with a pre-existing toy line than anything that happened in the US. While you could use him alongside your 12-inch original G.I. Joe figures, not many people did. Because G.I. Joe was essentially dead. Star Wars changed everything. While electronic toys were hot, the action figure market in the US was trending smaller. Mego's World's Greatest Superheroes had already begun the shift to smaller figures than the 12-inch G.I. Joes that had dominated the market since the 60s. Despite the novelty of ROM, without more toys to support it, or even comparable toys to play with it, ROM's life on the shelves would be short. It's estimated that Parker Brothers sold between 200 and 300,000 pieces, but that wasn't enough to justify expanding the line. By the time Marvel had established a fan base for the book, Parker Brothers had already moved on from production of ROM. In December of 1979, ROM was featured on the cover of Time magazine for a story about the boom in electronic toys. They were not kind to ROM. Quote, ROM is a spaceman doll whose computer memory gives it a disappointingly narrow range of behavior. It breathes heavily, one of its better effects, buzzes, twitters, and flashes its lighted eyes, and sounds ominous gongs, 1 for good and 2 for evil. The trouble with this Parker Brothers homunculus is that it looks as if it should be able to use its arms and legs like a true robot, and it can't. ROM will end up among the dust balls under the playroom sofa. Parker Brothers may have abandoned ROM, but Marvel didn't. They would continue to publish ROM through February of 1986, a total run of 75 issues and 4 annuals. He was a legitimate part of the Marvel Universe. Until 1991. Parker Brothers was purchased by Hasbro in 1991. Legally, that means that Parker Brothers owned the rights to everything related to the toy ROM, including his name and physical appearance. But Marvel owned everything related to the mythology that they had created, including all of the other characters. Neither side could tell the full story that fans grew up with without giving the other party some money. Marvel did what they could to tell stories within the world of ROM, but without actually calling the character ROM. In 2000, they released Space Knights. It featured characters inspired by many of the original Space Knights, as well as a character called Prince Tristan, who went by the name Liberator. His space armor looked an awful lot like ROM, but wasn't. He popped up in Marvel's Earth X, a story about an alternate future version of the Marvel Universe. In this future, he too was trapped in the limbo dimension where he was forced to battle all of the dire wraiths he put there. He was called the Greatest Space Knight, and as a human could be seen wielding his torso armor as a shield. The legal split made it difficult for Marvel to include him in reprints of all the other series that he made appearances in. Some appearances could be resolved with minor edits, others he would have to be completely removed from, and sections of the story are just missing. ROM would return in 2016 from IDW Publishing. They licensed ROM from Hasbro to include him in their new Hasbro comic book universe, with other Hasbro brands like Transformers, G.I. Joe, Visionaries, Mask, Action Man, and Micronauts. ROM played a critical role in the Hasbro comic book universe. His origin was fleshed out a bit more on the Hasbro side, which was inherited from Parker Brothers. The dire wraiths were back and making trouble in the Hasbroverse, and ROM was there to battle them once again until the shared Hasbro universe ended in 2018. A 3-issue limited series hit comic shelves in 2020. ROM Dire Wraiths was written by Chris Ryall and illustrated by Luca Pizzari, Guy Dorian, and original ROM artist Sal Buscema. The last issue was published on December 30th, 2020, and that brings his comic appearances up to date as of this video because that was like 2 weeks ago. The IDW Hasbro comic book universe resulted in the first new ROM action figure since his debut in 1979. It was also the first time any characters related to ROM's world were produced. In 2017, Hasbro released a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive action figure set featuring characters from the IDW Revolution crossover series. Jetfire from Transformers, Matt Tracker from Mask, some Micronauts, Roadblock from G.I. Joe, Action Man Leoric from Visionaries, ROM, and a Dire Wraith. In 2015, The Hollywood Reporter reported that Hasbro and Paramount Pictures had begun developing a shared cinematic universe that would include ROM along with G.I. Joe, Micronauts, Visionaries, G.I. Joe, and Mask. But by 2018, the project was still in development, with Zach Penn signed on to write ROM specifically. It's 2021, and surely ROM is still out there hunting Dire Wraiths, protecting the universe from their spectral shape-shifting powers. Whether or not that story will find its way onto a big screen or direct-to-home cinema is still to be determined. During his promotional press for Guardians of the Galaxy 2 in 2017, James Gunn, a big ROM and Spaceknight fan, was asked about whether or not he would be interested in taking on a film adaptation of ROM or rolling him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He said, quote, "ROM, the story is owned by Marvel Comics. So the Dire Wraiths, all that story is owned by Marvel Comics. The character and the toys are owned by Paramount, so you can't have both. Now you can't have the Space Knight at Marvel, and you can't have the Space Knights without the story. What always interested me was more the story of the Space Knights. People who gave up their humanity to save their planet was always very interesting to me. So there may be something to do with that, but it won't be with ROM." Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you haven't heard, we started a second channel called Toy Galaxy 2, that's T-O-O. Head over there and subscribe for stuff we don't post here. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy or become a YouTube channel member. Please share this video and let us know in the comments down below if you're a ROM fan and what brought you in. The vintage toy? The comics? Are you the creators of RoboCop and you stole his whole look from ROM? If so, please DM me. I have some ideas I would like to share with you that, like ROM, are fully developed and belong to other people, but we can work around that.